So today we're doing our last lesson of chapter 4, still working with inequalities. And we are focusing on rearranging inequalities into slope-intercept form and then graphing them and shading all of our possible solutions. So just a refresher on some of this. When you have an inequality in slope-intercept form, the first thing that you want to do is plot your y-intercept. Okay, so you're going to plot that point, and then you're going to graph your slope, your rise and your run. Then when you draw your line with your ruler, okay, this is very important, and look at this chart over here. If your sign is just less than or greater than, you're going to have a dotted line, okay, or a dashed line. If your line, and the reason is because any number on that line is not included in the solution, just like when we have an open circle when we graph on a number line. If your inequality symbol has an equal sign with it, you will draw a solid line, and that solid line means that every number that falls on that line is also included in the solution because it's equal to. Okay, then we are going to shade. If it's greater than, then we shade above the line. If it's less than, we shade below the line, and I'm going to explain that to you. I want everybody to, I want you to put your arm up and form a diagonal line. Okay, what I want you to touch the top of your arm. Okay, this is above the line right here. This is below the line. So if I were to have a line that was almost straight up like this, right, or almost straight up like this, if you're confused about it, touch your arm and know that you're going to shade this way. If it's greater than, if it's less than, you're going to shade this way. And the reason I'm doing this is a lot of students have trouble with that, with identifying what the location of what is greater and the location of what is less. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do with example 1 is we are going to rearrange this inequality into slope-intercept form. Okay. So I'm going to rewrite this here. Remember, we're trying to isolate that y, right? All right. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 2x on both sides. Okay. And I end up with 3y is greater than negative 2x plus 6. To continue to isolate that y, I need to divide by 3, and this is not anything new. We've been doing this pretty much all year. And I end up with y is greater than negative 2/3 x plus 2. Okay. So this is my inequality and slope-intercept. And now I am going to graph my line. Okay. So I'm going to plot a point at my y-intercept, which is 2. We even just tested on this, and you all did really well. Are you okay? Yeah. Okay, and then I'm going to graph my slope, which is up to run 3, but I have to go in the negative direction. So I'm going to go up to 1, 2, 3. You could also go down to 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to draw our line. Now remember, because it's just greater than and it does not have an equal sign, that means that I am going to draw a dashed line. So I'm just dash, 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 dash. Because there is not an equal sign underneath my inequality, I have a dashed line. Okay. Now, remember with inequalities, there's not one single answer like in equations. There's a multitude of answers. And what this inequality is saying is that y is greater than anything that this side will equal. So what that means is y can be anything above this line. And we represent that by shading. Now you do not have to shade like I do. You could just take your pencil and just shade like that above. So I know that you know it's greater than. I like to shade.
So with our line, we have to go all the way to the other side.
Yes, because you have to shade the whole thing.
Wait, we can do that on homework?
Yes. Well, you don't have to shade like this. Remember, you could just do a squiggly line above it. So I know that you know that that part is greater. Yeah.
I see the bottom.
I might be zoomed in a little bit too far. Let me zoom out just a little. Okay. So are there any questions about that? Okay, let's go to example 2. We have to first put this into slope-intercept form. So I need to subtract x on both sides.
Divided by a negative, so it's sign switch.
Yes, absolutely. Negative x plus 6, and then you have to divide by a -3, which Tyson just said, because we are dividing by a negative, we are going to flip that inequality symbol. So you end up with y is less than or equal to. Now we have a negative divided by a negative, so that's a positive 1/3 x.
Oh, so it would be, okay.
And then 6 divided by a -3 is a -2. Okay.
Could you put plus -2 or just -2?
You could put plus -2 if you want, but at this point, we should be eliminating that process. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to graph my inequality. So I plot a point at -2. And then I rise 1, run 3 in the positive direction. Oops. Oops. I did rise 1, run 2. Hold on just a second.
And since it's that sign is just a straight line, right?
Yes, because there's an equal sign, it'll be a solid line. Okay, so I'm going to draw my line. Solid line because there is an equal sign. And this time x is less than, so that means I'm going to shade below the line. So.
So going towards the y, we shade above, and if it's going towards the x, we shade below.
Yes,
Oh,
but
so we supposed to shade below it?
yeah, because because y is less than.
Oh.
If y is less than, huh? No, you could use your pencil. Okay. Oh, I still feel like I'm too far. There we go. That's what it looks like for example 2. Okay. Let's go ahead and go to the next page. All right, I am going to have you try these 2 on your own. Examples 3 and 4. Turn them into slope intercept and graph and shade, and then we'll come back and check your answers. You go ahead and check your answers for 3 and 4. Make sure that your lines and shading, you would have solid lines on both of them because there is an equal sign. Both of them are greater than. Notice both are greater than, but shaded on the opposite side of the graph, but still above the line. Are there any questions on those 2? All right, we're going to go ahead and move down to 5 and 6. And these are just a little bit different. So on this one, up here. I'm going to pause the video for just a second.
Okay.
No, you got it?
That's a So I thought it was gonna be -2. But never mind.
It is a -2.
Oh, never mind.
Oh, on the other one? Oh, yes, because a negative divided by a negative is positive. Okay. All right, so let's go back down to 5. I'm gonna subtract 3x. And I end up with y is greater than or equal to -3x plus 0 or just -3x. Okay, so in this one, we're gonna start at the origin because the y-intercept is 0. And we're gonna rise 3, run a -1. Or go down 3. Right, and then because there's an equal sign, we're gonna draw a solid line. Okay. And y is greater than. So we shade above the line.
They're on a different board.
Yes,
We divide by -4,
yes,
so we just fix it sign.
yes, you did.
Oh.
You want me to go back up to that one?
I did.
Okay, if I'm going too fast, let me know because I can stop and give you a minute to finish up a problem. Do you need me to give you a minute? Anyone a minute? Okay. All right. So let me check, make sure. So anytime you do something like that, just put an arrow and put this, oh, okay, you did, all right. Okay, everyone's ready to move on to 6. So on this one, we do not have to do any moving around.
It's already solved.
It is, except that our y is negative. So we just need to divide everything by a -1. Okay, and then we end up with -5 plus 3x, and we have to flip the sign, is greater than y. Now, if you don't like it looking like that, you can rewrite this as y is less than. Just make sure that if you flip it, that you also flip the sign. If you flip the two sides of the inequality, you have to flip the sign with it because y is less than, and here you have to show that y is less than.
Do you have to?
You do not have to rearrange the equation, no. It's just some people don't like looking at it this way. This is more confusing. Yeah. So, and then you would just graph this one like normal. So plot a point at -5 on the y-axis, rise 3, run 1, red. And this time you're gonna have a dotted line. So what you guys should all be using a pencil on your homework. But if for some reason you don't, and you draw a solid line and it should be dotted, just put an arrow to it and say, write the word dotted that way, or dashed or whatever, that way, and like I just did. Okay, so I just drew a solid line, but it should be dashed. So I'm just gonna use my whiteout. I do this all the time. Okay, so now y is less than, so I'm gonna shade to the right. Okay. And
So y is greater than 1 on the top.
yes, y is greater than it's on the top, but this is less than. Okay, let's go to the next page. And now we are going to graph some, just the first two are a little bit interesting, that's it. And so this says y is greater than x. Does anybody know how to graph that? David, what'd you say? Mm-hmm. Yeah, your slope is 1. This is just y is greater than 1x. So
Is 0?
yeah, it's Yeah, there's no y-intercept there, so we just, I mean, there's no y-intercept shown, so it's 0. And then we just rise 1, run 1,
And then a dotted line.
and then a dotted line. In this case, you could just probably leave it like this. And then shade. And so y is greater than, so in shade above. Bless you. Okay, and I want you guys to go ahead and graph the next one. It's just a negative x. And actually, I want you guys to go ahead and graph 8, 9, and 10. You should be able to do all 3 of those on your own. So I'm going to pause the video and then we will come back and check our answers on 8, 9, and 10. You can check example 8 here. Okay, you should have a solid line. And then, and then 9 and 10. Oh, so for number 10, you didn't. Okay.
I just put like 4 y.
And then the back is a little bit different. Okay, so let's move to the last page. Now, they're very similar. Yes.
Will be 1/1x. Right,
I'm sorry,
1/1
this one?
x.
No. So remember how when we had equations, let me get a piece of paper out here. And we had say x equals 7. And what we did on our graph is that we plotted a point on the x-axis at 7. And then you draw a line through the x-axis. Okay. If we had y equals -7, we would have plotted a point at -7 on the y-axis and drawn a line through it. Okay, that's what we're doing with inequalities, except now we're going to shade. So let's look at,
What side would it be on?
I'm going to show you. So on this one, we're going to graph on the x-axis, we're going to plot a point at -3. This is going to be a dashed line.
What do you know when he's going?
If there is not an equal sign, it's dashed. If there is an equal sign, it's solid. It's the same as like an open and closed.
I mean, like, what do you know when it's gonna be straight? And do you know when it's gonna be down?
Well, there's no slope right here. It's just x is greater than -3. Yeah, when there's no slope, basically. So now, how do we determine which area we shade? Well, you're going to shade in the greater, in this case, x is greater, so you're going to shade in the greater than direction. So where the numbers get bigger. Yep, so in this case, we're going to shade to the right.
Or I do basically
It's like a number.
side of the
Also,
sign.
well, no, Like because the bigger side of the thing. it's on the right, because -4 isn't greater than -3 to -2.
Just go on the opposite side, that's the time it's going right.
Not necessarily, because if your x was on the other side, that wouldn't work.
I mean, I'm talking about on the other side of the sign. So if the sign is facing left, you're on the right, and you face the left.
Only if the variable is on the left side
Okay.
will that work. All right, so on this one, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to plot a point at 8 on the x-axis. Because there's an equal sign, we're going to have a solid line. X is less than, so we're gonna shade to the left because our numbers are getting smaller. So in this case, we will shade this way
Oh, so it's just like on
on a number line.
yeah, like on that, never mind.
But don't get that confused with the inequalities where there is a slope. Because that's above or below. This is just to the left or to the right. Okay, last two problems. Now, instead of it being X, it's Y. So we're gonna do the same thing, but we're gonna plot a point on the Y-axis and draw a horizontal line. So here, we're gonna plot a point at -6 on the Y.
And straight above it.
And then shade above it because it's greater, and it's gonna be a solid line. Okay, so I will shade above. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and do that last example. This one's gonna be a dotted line or a dashed line.
Green shade below it, right?
Yep. Hey, you guys remember to use these notes when you're doing your homework as far as what areas to shade if you get confused. Or whether it's a dotted or a solid line. Okay, so that is 13 and 14. That concludes lesson 4.8 and chapter 4.